Why every basil plant you buy dies in 1 week and how to fix. Hello friends and welcome back to Earthly Delights, the place where houseplants meet heart and gardens grow right alongside your everyday life. If you're someone who has ever brought home a vibrant pot of basil from the supermarket, placed it proudly on your windowsill, and thought, this time I'm going to keep it alive, then you are exactly in the right place. Because let's be honest, most of us have lived that heartbreak. By the end of the week, those once glossy green leaves droop, turn yellow, and suddenly you're left staring at what feels like yet another failed attempt. But here's the secret I want to share. You're not alone and you're not doing anything wrong. My viewers here are people who care deeply about creating fresh meals at home, who love filling their kitchens and gardens with life, and who crave the satisfaction of nurturing something that grows. You might be a busy parent hoping to sprinkle fresh basil into your pasta, a young urban gardener trying to green up a tiny apartment, or maybe even a retiree finally indulging your love for indoor plants. No matter your background, you deserve plants that thrive, not just survive for a few days. And in today's video, I'm going to reveal the real reason those store-bought basil plants never last, and most importantly, how you can turn that short-lived disappointment into a lush, never-ending supply of fragrant leaves. Stick around until the end, because by then, you'll never look at supermarket basil the same way again. And before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join our Earthly Delights community where soil truly meets soul. 1. The hidden truth about store-bought basil. Here's the thing about those pretty little basil pots you find at the supermarket. They are not what they seem. From the outside, it looks like you're bringing home one healthy, bushy plant, ready to flavor your kitchen for weeks. But the truth, that single pot is actually packed with 20 or even 30 tiny seedlings, all crammed together in soil that was never meant to sustain them long-term. It's like stepping into a subway at rush hour. Everyone is pressed shoulder to shoulder, fighting for space, oxygen, and energy. And why would stores sell them this way? Because to the casual eye, a full leafy pot looks irresistible. You see lush green leaves and imagine fresh pesto or homemade pizza toppings. The store isn't thinking about your long-term basil journey. They're thinking about your dinner tonight. These pots are designed to be temporary, more like a living garnish than a lasting houseplant. Once it starts to wilt, most people toss it and buy another the following week. But I know you're here because you're not most people. You're part of this community of plant lovers who see more than just convenience. You see potential. You want basil that doesn't die by Thursday. You want plants that grow, recover, and become part of your daily life, not just fleeting decoration. And that's the difference between frustration and freedom. In a moment, I'll show you exactly how to break your basil out of this crowded prison and give it the room it needs to finally thrive. 2. Breaking the cycle, rescuing your basil. Now that you know the truth, the real work begins. And it's not about giving up on basil, it's about giving your plant a second chance at life. Imagine pulling that little pie out of its container and seeing what's really going on beneath the soil. Instead of healthy roots spreading freely, you'll find a solid, tangled mass, like a ball of spaghetti knotted tight. No wonder the plant is exhausted. It has been fighting for survival from the very beginning. Here's where you step in, not as a shopper, but as a rescuer. With a gentle touch, you take that root block and begin to separate it. At first, it feels impossible, as if every stem is fused together, but slowly they come apart. Some roots will snap, a few seedlings may not make it, and that's okay. Plants are tougher than we give them credit for, and just like people moving from a crowded dormitory into their own apartments, these seedlings will finally have space to breathe. When you place each one into fresh soil, in its own pot with room to stretch, you're giving it more than just a home. You're giving it a future. This moment transforms frustration into empowerment. You're no longer the person who keeps killing basil. Instead, you become the caretaker who stepped in when the odds were stacked against it. And as those rescued seedlings begin to settle and perk up, you'll see that your effort wasn't wasted. It's the first step in turning short-lived disappointment into months of fresh, thriving basil on your windowsill. 3. The right pot and soil for basil's new life. Once you've given your basil seedlings their freedom, The next step is choosing the perfect new home for them. Think of it like moving from a crowded dormitory into a cozy little apartment. Each plant now needs its own pot, something just big enough for the roots to stretch into, but not so massive that the soil stays heavy and wet. Drainage holes are non-negotiable. Without them, water pools at the bottom and suffocates the roots. If you don't have fancy planters, don't worry. Old mugs, arches, or tin cans with a few holes punched in the bottom can work beautifully. The goal is simple: a safe, breathable space where each plant can grow without competition. Soil is the second part of this story. Supermarket basil comes packed in something closer to a temporary growing medium than real soil, designed to last a few days, not months. What your rescued seedlings need is a mix that drains well but also holds just enough moisture to keep them steady. Indoors, a blend of coconut coir and perlite works wonders. It's airy, light, and discourages pesky fungus gnats. Outdoors or in a greenhouse, a nutrient-rich compost will do the job, giving your basil the boost it has been starved of since the day it was sown. When you scoop in that fresh soil and tuck each seedling into place, it's like giving them a clean slate. No more crowding, no more struggling for scraps of light and food. Just the promise of growth. And here is where the magic happens. Once your basil has a proper home, it finally has the chance to show you just how resilient it really is. This is the foundation for everything that comes next, because a plant with the right base will reward you again and again. 4. Training basil to grow bushy, not leggy. Now that your basil seedlings have their own space and fresh soil, the journey shifts from survival to shaping their future. This is where so many plant lovers go wrong. We see those glossy green leaves and can't resist picking them one by one, plucking from the top or the bottom whenever we feel like adding flavor to our meals. But what happens then? The plant stretches upward, becoming tall and spindly, with fewer leaves and little strength to regrow. That's why it feels like basil gives up on you so quickly. The real secret isn't in picking, it's in pruning. Basil, unlike some plants, grows from the tips. Every time you snip a growing tip just above a set of leaves, the plant responds with gratitude. 2 new stems will sprout from that point, doubling its growth. Do this consistently, and instead of 1 weak stalk, you'll have a bushy, thriving basil plant that keeps producing more leaves than you ever imagined. Think of it like giving your basil a haircut. It may feel harsh at first, but the reward is a thicker, healthier plant that looks and tastes far better. I've watched tiny seedlings rescued from supermarket pots turn into lush green towers simply because I had the patience to prune them properly. It's one of those little gardening habits that transforms everything. With just a few careful cuts, you're teaching your basil to branch out, to expand, and to become generous with its harvest. This is the moment when your plant stops being fragile and starts becoming abundant. And it's all thanks to the way you guide its growth. 5. Double your basil propagation made simple. Here's where growing basil becomes more than just keeping a plant alive. It becomes a way to multiply abundance. Every time you prune your basil, you hold in your hand not just a fragrant clipping for tonight's dinner, but the beginning of a brand new plant. Propagation might sound like a fancy gardening term, but in reality, it's one of the simplest, most rewarding tricks you'll ever learn. All it takes is a small cutting, a glass of water, and a little patience. Picture this: you snip a healthy stem just above a leaf node, remove the lower leaves, and place that bare stem into clear water on your kitchen counter. Day by day, you'll notice tiny white roots emerging, almost like the plant whispering back to you, "Tien, thank you for giving me another chance." Within a week or two, those roots will be long enough to plant into soil, and suddenly you've doubled your basil supply without spending another penny. This isn't just about saving money, it's about creating a cycle of growth that keeps your kitchen full of fresh flavor. I've seen people turn one struggling pot of supermarket basil into a dozen thriving plants, lined up along a windowsill like a little indoor farm. And the joy of watching those new roots form, of knowing you had a hand in creating life, is something every indoor gardener should experience. It connects you more deeply to the process, transforming basil from a fragile purchase into a never-ending source of pride and harvest. 6. Light the lifeline of basil. Now that you've given your basil space to breathe and even learned how to multiply it, we have to talk about the one factor that decides whether your plant flourishes or fades. Light. Basil is a child of the Mediterranean, born under warm skies and long sunny days, and it simply cannot thrive in a dim corner of your kitchen. Yet so many of us tuck it onto a north-facing windowsill, hoping it will adapt. What happens then? The stems stretch higher and higher, leaves get smaller, and before long, the plant looks tired and weak. It isn't misbehaving, it's reaching desperately for light that isn't there. If you're lucky enough to have a sunny, south-facing window, your basil will feel right at home. East or west can work too, giving a good dose of morning or afternoon sun. But if your home doesn't offer that, don't give up. This is where technology comes to the rescue. A simple clip-on grow light, nothing fancy, can mimic the sun and keep your basil happy even through the darkest winter months. Think of it as giving your plant a reliable day in the sun, no matter the season. And here's the beauty of it. Once basil has enough light, it rewards you quickly. Leaves grow larger, greener, and richer in flavor. The plant no longer struggles upward but spreads outward, strong and bushy. For anyone who has ever felt guilty watching a plant fade on their windowsill, this is your chance to rewrite the story. With the right light, basil doesn't just live. It thrives, reminding you daily of what's possible when we give living things what they truly need. 7. Heat and comfort. Basil's Mediterranean roots. If light is the lifeblood of basil, then warmth is its comfort blanket. This plant has its roots in sun-soaked courtyards of the Mediterranean, where chilly nights are rare and warmth is the rule of life. Bring basil into a kitchen that dips below 12 degrees Celsius at night, and you'll see it sulk almost immediately. Its leaves droop, its growth slows, and before long you are left wondering why it's refusing to play along. The truth is simple. Basil doesn't do cold. Think of your basil as a visitor from Italy. It adores long, sunny afternoons, gentle breezes, and steady warmth. But put it by a drafty window in winter, and it shivers. Set it beside a radiator that blasts on and off all day, and it becomes stressed and confused. The trick is to find a stable environment, warm but not scorching, consistent rather than unpredictable. Indoors, this could mean moving your pot away from chilly glass at night, or placing it in the heart of your kitchen where warmth lingers. Outdoors, it might mean covering it with a simple cloche, or even a recycled plastic bottle dome when nights turn cool. When basil feels comfortable, it shows you almost instantly. Its leaves take on that glossy, vibrant look. Its stems thicken, and the aroma deepens into something you'll smell even before you see it. That's basil at ease, telling you it's right where it belongs. By honoring its Mediterranean roots, you're not just keeping a plant alive, you're inviting a little piece of southern sunshine into your own home. 8. Watering wisdom. Quenching basil's thirst. If warmth is basil's comfort, then water is its daily refreshment. But here's where so many well-meaning plant lovers stumble. We love our basil so much that we drown it in kindness, watering every day as if more water means more growth. In reality, basil hates having soggy feet. Its roots need oxygen as much as they need moisture, and when soil stays wet for too long, those roots suffocate and rot away. Suddenly the plant collapses, and you're left blaming yourself when the truth is you simply gave too much love at once. The key is not to water by the calendar, but by the plant itself. Before reaching for the watering can, press your finger into the soil. If the top inch is dry, it's time for a drink. If it still feels damp, wait another day. For those who prefer gadgets, a simple moisture meter can be a handy guide, but your touch works just as well. And when you do water, do it thoroughly. Let the water run through the soil and out of the drainage holes, ensuring every root has a chance to sip. Then let the soil breathe again before you water next. Basil is a fast grower, which means it will ask for more water during sunny, warm periods, and less when the light fades. By paying attention, you'll soon notice its rhythm, almost like listening to a friend telling you what they need. Once you find that balance, never too dry, never too wet, you'll discover basil doesn't throw tantrums at all. It thrives steady and reliable as long as you learn to quench its thirst with care rather than habit. 9. Feeding for flavor and strength. Water keeps your basil alive, but food is what gives it strength and flavor. Remember, this is a plant that grows quickly, producing new leaves almost every day when it's happy. That kind of growth takes energy, and the soil it sits in can only give so much before it's exhausted. Without regular feeding, basil starts to show its hunger. The leaves fade to pale green, growth slows, and the aroma becomes faint. It's not that you're doing anything wrong, it's simply the plant telling you, I need a little more to keep going. The solution is to feed it lightly but consistently. A balanced liquid fertilizer works perfectly, something gentle that replenishes nutrients without overwhelming the plant. Even homemade options, like a weak compost tea or a sprinkle of crushed eggshells, can make a big difference. But here's the secret. Moderation matters. Overfeed, and the plant will shoot out soft, weak growth that insects love to attack, and the taste of the leaves may even turn bitter. Think of it as cooking for a friend. You wouldn't overload their plate until they felt sick. You'd serve just enough at the right times to keep them nourished and satisfied. Basil responds in the same way. With the right balance of food, its leaves grow larger, their fragrance deepens, and every harvest feels richer. This is how your basil becomes more than decoration. It becomes a steady source of vibrant flavor, proof that careful feeding creates lasting strength. And once you taste the difference, you'll never go back to neglecting this simple step. 10. Beyond basil, the herb family secret. By now you've learned how to rescue basil, give it space, prune it for fullness, propagate it endlessly, and keep it strong with light, warmth, water, and food. But here's the part that excites so many gardeners. The same lessons apply to other herbs you bring home. That pot of coriander that always collapses after 3 days? It's overcrowded just like basil. The parsley that seems to fade before you even taste it? It's crying out for space and consistent care. Even mint, as vigorous as it is, benefits from proper pruning and thoughtful watering. Once you realize this, your kitchen garden suddenly expands. You're no longer just someone who buys herbs and hopes for the best. You become the gardener who turns supermarket pots into a steady supply of fresh flavor. Imagine lining your windowsill with thriving green pots, each one telling the story of how you stepped in where the store stopped. Every snip you take for cooking becomes part of a bigger cycle of growth and renewal. And this is where it feels less like a chore and more like a joy. Growing herbs indoors connects you daily to something alive, something that responds to your care with fragrance and abundance. It saves money, yes, but more than that, it transforms your kitchen into a place of living, green energy. Master basil, and you'll find yourself ready to take on the whole herb family. It's a quiet kind of self-sufficiency, one that brings pride every time you harvest leaves you grew with your own hands. From store-bought to self-sufficient. So what started as a simple pot of supermarket basil, a plant most people expect to throw away after a week, has now become your doorway into something bigger. You've seen the truth. Those pots are overcrowded, designed for quick use, not long-term life. But by separating the seedlings, giving each one its own home, pruning with care, propagating cuttings, and respecting basil's need for sun, warmth, water, and food, you've learned how to turn something fragile into something lasting. Suddenly, you're not just cooking with basil. You're growing it, shaping it, and enjoying it week after week. And here's the beauty of it. Basil is just the beginning. The same steps can carry you into parsley, coriander, mint, and beyond. Every small success in your kitchen or garden adds up, building confidence and joy. That's what gardening really offers. It's not just about leaves in a pot, but about the sense of connection you feel when you see life responding to your care. Now I want to hear from you. Have you struggled with store-bought basil before? Did it always seem doomed no matter what you tried? Share your story in the comments. I read them all, and your experiences help others in our community feel less alone on their plant journey. And if you found these tips helpful, don't forget to give this video a like, hit subscribe, and join our growing family here on Earthly Delights. Together, we'll keep learning, keep planting, and keep turning small pots of green into big moments of joy.